Opioids-related deaths continue to soar nationwide, with 72,000 deaths just last year alone. This month is Opioid Awareness Month, and joining me in the studio is Melody Conway, a mother who lost a son from an opioid-related death. And I'm also joined by Bill Pimetto, who works for, or you're part of the Wareham Fighting Against Addiction group.
Yes.
Welcome to you both.
Thank you.
So, Melody, let's start with you. You have a special way to pay a tribute to those taken too soon from this addiction. Could you tell us what you do?
Well, in 2015, the year after my son passed away, I was struggling for a way to memorialize not only his loss, but, as you said, those in Massachusetts taken too soon. So I came up with the idea of planting flags in my yard. So that first year, I put up 2,661 flags, which signified 2014 and 15. It was the 2 years since my son had passed. The folks at the Masonic Lodge were wonderful and stopped by and offered to host that in 2016. So we went, my family and some friends, and we placed the flags there, right on Route 28, so that folks could see them and it sparks conversation. That's the whole point of the project, is to get people talking and try to erase the stigma surrounding addiction and opiate use. So that last year we put 2,069 flags up for just the 1 year. It was heartbreaking. As a result of that, though, conversation started on Facebook. A lovely young lady, Allison McDonough, had seen the flags, and so she started a conversation on Facebook that she was proud of her community for stepping up and, again, erasing the stigma, talking about this. She herself is in recovery and has a beautiful family now, and she's a wonderful inspiration. And I'm going to pass this over to Bill now, because from that, this wonderful Wareham Fighting Addiction group grew.
Absolutely. Yeah, that conversation, on Facebook brought Allison and myself together, which the two of us reached out to a few other community members to try to bring to this area what some of the other areas have, which is the resource drop-in center, where not only addicts themselves, but family members of addicts can come and get some resources to get some treatment, and for that struggling mother to better understand the disease and how it works.
And it's interesting, both of you have mentioned the word disease, and that's a new mindset, a new way to look at addiction. Before, there was big stigma, and the stigma is still until today, and that is, it's not a disease. You want to harm yourself, or you're doing this purposely. But now we are trying, or people are trying to educate themselves and to look at this as a disease. And tell me how looking at addiction, any type of addiction as a disease, how it resonated in your experiences.
Well, it's absolutely a true thing. It is a disease as diabetes or anything else that requires treatment is. And the sad part is that too many refuse to accept that. Addiction has deep roots. It is triggered by chemical imbalance in the mind, and it can be any one of us is subject to becoming a victim of addiction, of triggering the disease, if you will. Folks can carry all kinds of things and not ever have it come to fruition, and unfortunately some do. So changing that mindset is a huge part in how the treatment is affected, whether it's medically assisted treatment or recovery programs. It's hugely important, because the biggest cause of opiate-related death, aside from the physical drug, is that people are fearful to seek help because they don't want to be labeled, because people look down on them. It drives people into the shadows. So, part of what we've done, or I've done, and my family has done since we lost Brent, was to just continue to speak out, stand up, and just drag it into the light and say, no, this is a real thing. It's a disease, and it needs real treatment.
Yes. What about
Absolutely. Melody's absolutely right. It affects every area of one's life when they have it, and sometimes people will, go a long time before they actually realize that they do have it, and then when they do realize that they are addicted to not only opiates but any other symptom of the disease of addiction, they run into that stigma that tells them that they can't get the treatment that they need because they'll have that label for life.
Yeah. Now, Melody, when you were going through this with your son, did you know that it was a disease, or was it a learning process?
It was a hideous learning process. And I myself was guilty of believing it was something he could just stop if he wanted to badly enough. I was guilty of that all through our 6 years that I was even aware. I really felt like it was a failing that he just couldn't quit. Unfortunately, my lessons came too late. That's yet another reason for us and me bearing my soul and sharing our darkness, if you will, because I want people to educate themselves early. I want folks to be alert and aware of things that may be going on in their families' lives that they're just putting their heads in the sand about. Don't do that. If you are fearful, then step up, put your hand out, try to offer guidance, if you will. The Drop-In Center is a tremendous resource in our community. And I'm so grateful that it's here, lessons I learned too late. It's very important that the public is educated, because it could be anybody. It could be me, you don't know, you really don't know.
How do you, not necessarily convince, but how do you explain to the public, those who have not gone through this at all, that this is a disease? As you have said, it's not about weakness. It's a disease. How do you drive that point home to somebody who hasn't experienced what both of you have experienced?
I don't know. I don't know if there's a right answer to that.
I kind of feel like, just going out on a limb and say 1 in 3 people have either experienced or know somebody who has experienced this nationwide epidemic that, it's really hard to convince somebody that we can, an addict can't just stop. I think they view it a little differently than they do alcoholism, which is, alcohol's a drug. We have to look at that the same way.
Mm-hmm. And it's funny how the society works. We choose what constitutes a drug or what will constitute a sickness, even though the symptoms are the same. Somebody is suffering, yet we have a line on, okay, this is okay and that's not okay.
And that's where the stigma comes in.
Right, the stigma is, the alcoholism is a little bit more socially acceptable than drug addiction itself. So teaching, someone the ins and outs of whether they're enabling their loved one or if they're helping their loved one is a challenge.
Absolutely.
But there's resources out there for that. I mean, we have the Drop-In Center where we put together, I said this before, not only resources for addicts themselves to either get, detox or mental health treatment or medicated assisted treatment with either, methadone or Suboxone or Vivitrol. The treatment options have come so far. We also have learned to cope for the loved ones of the addict who don't really understand the disease and don't realize that every time you give your son or your daughter $20, they're feeding their disease. When you think you're trying to help them, you're actually hurting them. We also have Naranon, which is a nonprofit program that helps loved ones get through the things that they don't really understand. The therapeutic value of somebody who's gone through it, like Melody, is irreplaceable.
How is the community, our Wareham community? We are struggling with our own right with substance abuse. Just last week, I found a young woman on the sidewalk, just in a fetal position. She was completely purple. And what was even said than that was when I called the paramedics, the police, as soon as they got there, they knew her by first name. Mm-hmm. All of them knew her. It was almost like, again, this is happening again. And I felt like that was the most saddest part, to struggle with this that much, the point that this community or the police officers, they can look at you and kind of count the days. When will we be called again to come and revive you? Mm-hmm. How is our community helping you?
I have found that the community has been tremendously welcoming to my message, if you will. Some will, some won't, and that's just part of life. It's okay. Part of our raising awareness with the Brent Hastings Memorial Fund is also raising funds to support men in recovery. And so I go around, myself and a dedicated group of volunteers, and we solicit donations, and we raise money to put people in recovery beds. That's our mission. I couldn't save my son, and if what I can do in his name is save someone else's child, then that gives value to his life, in my opinion. I can share the lessons I've learned the hard way to help maybe somebody who was like me, didn't want to talk about it, I didn't share with family, I did not share with friends. I isolated myself as a parent. I isolated my son from everyone. We stopped going to holidays. We just didn't do life. We were very engulfed in this disease that he was battling heartily. Mm-hmm. And so you say, the person that they've revived multiple times, my son overdosed multiple times before the fatal overdose. It wasn't the first time. He struggled through recovery programs. I just found there was no long-term solution, no place for him to go. And so that's what we do, is we all work together to assist folks in finding those programs and understanding that you will fight your way back to normalcy, if you will, as heartily as you dug yourself into a hole. So you have to get, and I say into a hole, it's the dark, that darkness I was talking about, of fearing reaching out and fearing asking for help, if you will. So, you got to get people to talk. We need to keep the light on the subject. We need to keep moving forward with different programs and different treatment, and having folks understand that, that vision you had of a junkie shooting up in a street alley is not a true or the only picture. It is, right. There are people that are functioning addicts that get up and go to work every day, that are struggling in ways you would never know. You never would know it.
Absolutely.
So we have to be open and welcoming to letting people seek recovery.
And I think another way is to either to talk about how an addict become to be. I think that most times we forget or we don't ask, what led you here? What happened in between? I do not believe somebody wakes up in the morning, especially now after you see that, okay, this is something bad, people struggle with this, they can die with this. Why would you wake up in the morning and say, that's exactly what I'm going to do to myself? Especially as a young adult, you have a life ahead of you. So we need to talk about the stories, different path, how people end up there. And I think we should focus on preventing people to end up there, either to reach out sooner. What are you hearing? What are you seeing?
Yeah, people don't just wake up and say, okay, I'm going to become an addict today. It's, you know, sometimes it's peer pressure and they start out and it's fun. Then at some point that fun turns into dependence. And then it just continues to grow from there. Other times it's, you know, people go through some things and they don't want to feel something, so they, you know, they use the drugs so they don't have to feel. Mm-hmm. Or, you know, I think the biggest part of this for the opioids is, you know, the doctors give you a script for pain for something, and that script just turns into this giant snowball that once you become dependent on it, you don't have a choice.
Yeah.
And that's what happened with Brent.
Right.
You know, he started with a work-related injury. You know, this was a long time ago as well. I mean, Brent would be 30 he would be turning 31 shortly. It started when he was, I think, 18, 19 years old, was his first introduction to opiate pain meds. I'm not saying he was addicted from that point, but we have introduced generations of people to opiates legally prescribed
Right.
as a measure of pain relief, and in a giant amount of the population, it trips a trigger, if you will, in the brain that says, oh, well, that's nice. So that was there. They didn't go seeking it. It was handed to them.
Mm-hmm. By an authority
By
that
an
you trust.
authority that you trust.
You don't question your doctor.
And so now it's a slippery slope to, well, the next time, you know, there's a work-related injury and they hand you that opiate, where are you in your life at that moment? That can you put it down later? The slip from taking your doctor-prescribed pills to illegally purchased pills to heroin is a financial slide frequently, because pills on the street are very expensive. The heroin on the street is not. Someone who would never pick up a needle and inject themselves with a drug finds themselves doing just that, because the pain from not having the drug is greater than the fear. So there is that, how do we reach that point? But before that point, how do we do that? And I think there's been a tremendous amount of awareness, a lot of pressure now on the pharmaceutical industry for their part and their knowing part in how this all came down. You know, opiates were created, these oxys were created for terminally ill patients as end-of-life pain measure. How did that go from that point where it did not truly matter if that person was addicted to handing it out for a back injury? That's, we can go back and fix that, but boy, we can be aware going forward. Absolutely. You know, and I always tell parents, you know, you don't have to take what the doctor handed you. I've had some pretty traumatic injuries since Brent's situation, and I absolutely refuse to take any opiate-based pain medication. I absolutely refuse it. I had to sign a waiver at the hospital stating that I refused pain medication because they wanted to give it to me.
I bet, yes.
Hard.
I'm thinking, I'm like, they don't go through all this trouble to make sure when they're giving it to you to sign, okay, I'm about to take this legally and stuff. No, but when you refuse it, it's almost like, how could you? How dare you?
It's a difficult place to be, yeah.
Absolutely.
And it's sad to think of it like that there's this big scheme behind the scenes from those making it, those administering it, and
72,000
Just
individuals passed away from opiate-related overdose. This is not all overdose or all drug-related deaths.
Right.
This is just opiates in the United States. 72,000 people. That's disgusting.
It is.
It is.
And
infuriating.
Absolutely. We were talking before the show, and you said that the amount of flags you planted this year have decreased. Now, once again, your flags only represent the state of Massachusetts. So it may be good for us, but it's not good for the nationwide.
Correct.
Yeah. How are you feeling? Are you optimistic? What are you hearing maybe from state representatives? Are you seeing it making a big difference?
I think it is. I think it is making a difference. You know, 4.5 years ago when Brent passed, no one was talking about this. Very few small corners. There were groups like Narcotics Anonymous out there doing their battles slowly, but people were afraid to ask for help. But I think that, and it's not just me, myself, and thousands of other parents and family members have stood up and said no more.
Yes.
We can't let this go anymore. You know, 6 months after Brent died, we were having our first golf tournament, and I stood in front of 150 people and told our story, a story I had never told anyone before. So it still hurts me, you know. So we are doing good things. I'm hearing good things. You see it on the news. Again, the pressure on the pharmaceutical industry. The states are coming together and forcing them to put resources into recovery programs, which is a good thing. You know, I think the number came down from 2,069 in 2016 to 1,874 in 2017. It's a small decrease, but any decrease is a positive place, again, just in Massachusetts, though. So I want to thank you guys for putting those flags up. It was
Absolutely.
one too many things on my plate as I go and try to build what we do on the recovery side. So I just felt like it was a good place for the flags to go. Wareham Fighting Addiction Group put them up this year.
Absolutely. What a difference. Really catches you right after as you enter Wareham. It's like, wow. And either you know what is happening or what those flags represent, or as you mentioned, it's a statement piece of people start asking or wondering.
Sparking conversation.
Yes.
It definitely sparks a conversation.
Bill, you were talking about, sorry to interrupt, but you mentioned about long-term plan that, you know, if from somebody when they overdose, that they just take them to rehab for a few days and then bring them back. What does a long-term plan look like? A good treatment.
I
How does it
think
look
that's
like?
where Melody comes in, because, you know, the way the insurance companies pay for things today, you know, they're going to give them the 5 to 7 days at a detox, and then they're going to, you know, send them back out on the street most of the time. If you're one of the fortunate ones to have really good insurance, you can get into a longer term bed after that and maybe get another 30 days on top of the 7. But, you know, the Brent Hastings Foundation pays for young men to stay in longer term treatment. That's a beautiful thing.
And it's expensive. Treatment is expensive.
Absolutely.
It's not that people do not want to go. You cannot afford it.
Right.
Families are tapped out, they're financially ruined on many levels. But it's Bill can attest to this. It's incredibly important that there be a change in your entire behavior, manner of thinking. All of these things have to change, and so you can't just do the detox and go home. And even the 30-day programs, you need a longer, monitored opportunity to change everything, because
They want to come home from detox or come home from that 30-day treatment and go show their friends how good they're doing. But in all actuality, that going to see your friend, what you thought was your friends, they're going to get you high. And
What
you
do
don't
you-
have that tolerance anymore. So that's where it comes in. You know, the quick spin dry is probably hurting more people than it's helping, because they don't have the tolerance in their body anymore. So when they think, oh, I used to be able to do this much, and they go and do that much, they overdose. You know,
What do you work on with, at the clinic? What do you work on with addicts? Like, how do you help them recover?
Well, I work in treatment, and right now I'm working with medicated assisted treatment with methadone, which is it's another stigma, right? Because we trade one drug for the other. But you know what? I know that here in Wareham alone, we have a clinic here that there's 500 plus clients that come into that clinic. Those 500 plus clients are not the ones that the police are reviving every week. If medicated assisted treatment is used properly, you're not getting high from it. You're able to function. You become, productive members of society today. And then they work with a counselor like me to, regain those morals and values, and practice some principles in their life to, not steal anymore, or make sure they're getting up every day and going to work and taking care of their children. I've helped not only women but men get their children back in their life, and stay away from the illicit drugs, and be able to function in this world. I mean,
you're building strength and confidence in their own character again, and that's
right.
hugely important to staying drug-free. They have to have confidence in themselves,
right.
which has been beaten up and eroded. So that's partly what I guess Bill was saying. What we do is the insurance runs out, and we step up and offer a hand up, if you will, as opposed to a handout. And I try to, give folks 30 days to stand up, get on their feet. The Gosnold program has been tremendously. It's where we funnel our resources, and the Heron Project also provides a life coach. That life coach's job is to help them, get the driver's license back, and how to interview with a felony conviction on your record so you can get a good job and explain your life in a way that's positive. Confidence is the key to long-term recovery. And
Absolutely.
Now, where are we? I mean, we've discussed about the addiction, but what can we do now? How do we move on from here? How do we keep on building?
I just think the conversation needs to continue, and I greatly appreciate your inviting me in today, and I'm sure Bill feels the same way.
Absolutely.
Giving us a platform and a way to reach out to folks that we wouldn't perhaps otherwise have a chance to speak with.
I think that it's important that conversation continues, and to bring the light closer to Wareham itself. I mean, this is Wareham TV.
Absolutely.
The numbers that we're talking about, 72,000 nationwide, and statewide the numbers went down 200, right?
Yeah.
Which is great. But I know from going to this meeting that I go to over at the courthouse with all the different entities, that the numbers in Wareham itself are higher. We need to stay vigilant and get that information out there. Like, I believe the last time I was at that meeting, they did overdose, not deaths, but number of overdoses within each town. And, Marion had 4, Plymouth had 8, Wareham had 15. The number was higher in Wareham than it was anywhere else in Plymouth County, which is crazy to me. We need to make sure people know that this resources are out there. There is no stigma to walk into that drop-in center and say, hey, I need some help. I feel very blessed that, we started this last November. That conversation on Facebook turned into, hey, Melody, can we use your flags? And we want to do an overdose vigil in downtown Wareham and bring some light. And even though we did that overdose vigil in the middle of November and it was cold outside, we had some people show up. We got some people to participate. We got some people to donate. It was a great thing, and this thing has continued to grow. I want to make sure that the community knows every third Wednesday of the month that the Wareham Fighting Addiction Drop-In is open at 74 High Street, which is, we were very gracious that the Church of the Good Shepherd allows us to use their hall, and they help be a part of this. And you can come there and get some resources, not only for the addict who suffers, but the family member that doesn't know what to do. We also pass out Narcan with Narcan trainings, so that that one mother that says, "Oh, not me," is able to say, "Okay, I've been trained on this stuff, and I know, if that happens if it does happen to me, I'm prepared."
Absolutely.
Because it wasn't that long ago I was listening to the police scanner where they revived someone over on High Street, with 4 doses of Narcan, and he took off running down High Street half naked, and the mother was standing there like, "What do I do? I don't know.
Help me.
Help me." Right. So that's where we come in, and we try to assist them the best that we can. So.
Very good. Thank you to you both.
Thank you.
Thank you to our viewers for joining us in another episode of The Official Report, filmed right here at WCTV Studio with me, your host, Queen Banda. Joining me was Melody Conway, mother who lost a son too early from an opioid-related disease. And also we have Bill Pimentel, who works with Wareham Fighting Against Addiction. So you have heard them, the resources are there. Please reach out before the problem happens so you can educate yourself. Reporting from WCTV, I am Queen